on clinical nursing and midwifery research in Southern and Eastern African countries. I wanted to clarify before I start that throughout the presentation, if I say nursing, I'm really referring to nursing and midwifery because in many African countries they're included together. And also, this particular dissertation is on clinical research, so if I say nursing research, I'm talking about clinical nursing research, which is focused on patient outcomes. So some background is that in African countries, they have some of the highest rates of communicable diseases in the whole world, and at the same time, they suffer the greatest effects of the nursing shortage, having the lowest proportion of nurses in any healthcare region. At the same time, the nurses there provide the majority of healthcare. And most nursing research comes from the United States and Europe, and as does funding for nursing research. And I wanted to start out by including this picture of this woman that I met in Kenya. And as I went into the room, she lives in a dirt and stick home, and she has this little infant that she's feeding from a bottle, and there's an open fire in the middle of the room. And so the room is filled with smoke, and it's probably 120 degrees, and she had the baby wrapped in swaddling clothes. And so as a nurse, you walk into the room and you feel like there are so many things I want to fix right away. I see so many problems that can endanger not only her health, but the health of her children. And I thought that this illustrates why it might be that nursing research that's produced in Europe or in America is maybe not applicable to the scenario that the nurses would face there. And additionally, people who don't live there or aren't familiar with the circumstances that are providing funding may see certain issues as a priority that the healthcare workers on the ground may not see as the critical research priority for the region. So I used this conceptual framework for my dissertation. It's called Shannon Weaver's model of communication. It's also known as the information theory. And the idea is that there's a message that's transmitted, and there's some noise potentially that could affect the message, and then it reaches its receiver and the destination. And in this dissertation, the information source is the clinical nursing research that's available. The transmitter are the expert clinical nurses doing the research in the region. The message is what are the nursing research priorities. The noise would be the resources, such as affiliations with the nursing school or international affiliations or major funding for their research. The receiver are the nurses, the midwives, the people doing practice or research there. And then eventually you would hope that through the research done you would see improved health outcomes. So aim 1 of my dissertation was focused on the information source. Aim 2 was looking at not only the transmitter, but the message. Who are the researchers and what are the critical priorities for research? And then the third aim was looking at this noise source, or the resources for the region. And future work would include these last two sections, the receiver and the destination. These are my specific aims. The first was to assess the current state of clinical nursing and midwifery literature in the region. The second was to identify the research priorities for the region. And the third was to describe predictors of clinical nursing and midwifery research in Southern and Eastern African countries. This was part of a larger study that was funded through the Presidential Global Innovation Fund, and it's through the Office of Global Initiatives. And our collaborators were University of Malawi, also the University of Nairobi School of Nursing in Kenya, as well as Fundisa and Columbia Global Centers in Africa. I also wanted to mention that all of the research was done under the guidance and leadership of our collaborators in African countries to ensure that what we were doing was critical for the region and was what they considered to be a priority. So the first specific aim was to assess the state of the current research, and I did this through two different studies. The first was a scoping review of all the index literature, and the second was through a gray literature review of unpublished or published literature that wasn't in index sources. And again, looking at the conceptual framework, this is the first part of this. So the scoping review definitions, I wanted to explain what a scoping review is. It's a review of the literature that doesn't have a narrow clinical question, and it's not a specific region. So you can use it to assess a broad topic of literature over a large geographical area. And then, as I said before, when I say we're looking at clinical research, we're focused on patient outcomes in the research. And the idea was to first look at the whole continent of Africa, all 54 countries, and see what research